Ooh, that was a really good one. Sorry about that. Good afternoon, Rotarians and guests. Welcome to the Rotary Club of Toledo. It's an absolutely gorgeous day outside, so it's a good day to be celebrating Earth Day. As we get started today, I would like to ask Fran Anderson to come to the podium and deliver a reflection and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
We are thankful for this day, its blessings, opportunities, and challenges. May we make good use of each day as it comes to us. We pray for strength and guidance, seeking to grow in selflessness, good cheer, and a sincere desire to help our neighbor. May we be challenged to give our best always. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, and with justice for all. Thank you.
Thanks, Fran. Thank you, Fran. As we begin our meeting today, I'd like to thank and acknowledge Danbury Realtors as this month's sponsor and Rotarian Max Reddish. So Max, thank you very much. I know the answer to this question, but does anyone have any guests with them they'd like to introduce? And if so, please come to the floor mic and introduce them.
President Travis, I have with me my wife, Mary, who is a former Rotarian, and from the greetings she got when I brought her in the room, I think she should come back, don't you?
I love it. I love it. Mary, it's great to see you.
President Travis and fellow Rotarians, I'm excited to introduce to you Tiffany Bosch, who is the President and CEO of the Sylvania Area Chamber of Commerce.
Excellent. Welcome.
It's our
Glad
first
you're
time
here.
So.
Good afternoon, Mr. President. I have as a guest Kathy Rohde, the Marketing Director for my law firm, Marcio Law.
Excellent. Welcome.
Rotarians, with me, I have Bob Clark Phelps. He is retired from First Solar and is very active in the Citizens Climate Lobby.
Excellent. Welcome, Bob.
Rotarians and guests, I have my team with me today, introducing people that are new to Toledo, the new majors of the Salvation Army, Northwest Ohio Services, Major Candy Fritsch, her husband, Major J.R. Fritsch, Laura Henthorn is volunteer and event coordinator at the Salvation Army, and my best friend is the new director of operations at the East Toledo Family Center. So thank you for coming.
Excellent. Welcome, everyone.
Tim Brown, sorry, I forgot his
does
name.
Does he have a name? Or, Excellent. Well, thanks, everybody, for being here. It's great to see so many guests. So, as everybody's been hearing about for, 9 months or so, we're having a golf outing this year. And one of the cool things that's come out of the outing recently is that 13 ABC worked with us and actually came out and shot a advertisement for the golf outing and about the club. So if we could we please roll that video? It's the one that says play. Alex has a hell of a follow-through, just for the record, but... I believe this is number 8. I don't know. I'm making that up. I have no idea. Well, while they're doing... Okay. Well, we'll have to do it another time. We'll put it out on social media. Anyway, so as you all know, the Scramble is coming up on May 6th. The great news is that all the foursomes are sold out. The committee has done a fantastic job hitting our financial goals and what we're hoping to raise. And if you would like to come, that is going to be our normal Monday meeting. We'll be hearing from First Tee. And so please come to Sylvania Country Club on Monday the 6th. Please RSVP for that meeting so we can get an accurate head count. So everybody is welcome, even if you're not playing in the outing. So sorry for the little AV hiccup there. But next up, Max Reddish, could you please come to the floor mic for an update on the food pack?
Hey, guys.
Hey.
This thing on? Yeah, I'm here to talk about the food pack a little bit, representing the Community Services Committee. I want to first off thank Mackenzie Appel for taking the reins on this one from Scott this year. She's doing a heck of a job, and she has gotten everything organized just the way it needs to be. The date this year is going to be May 11th. The location is going to be at the Ottawa Hills Elementary School, and there will be 4 shifts. We've got an 8 to 9, a 9 to 10, a 10 to 11, and 11 to noon. The 9 through 11 shifts are going to be all for packing, and then obviously the earlier and the later shifts will be for cleanup and setup. Currently, we've got 13 volunteers so far, so we've got a few weeks, and we need a few more volunteers. We're hoping to have more than we have now. We've got up to 40 per shift, but we don't need that many, but we do need more than 13, guys. Let's see here. Ottawa Hills Elementary, May 11th, sign up. I believe if you follow that QR code right here, it'll take you directly to the Sign Up Genius, and you can sign up right now. And it'd be a great opportunity to get your phones out while I'm talking before the presentator gets here. And you can
So one time you're allowed to use your
There you
phone during the
go.
meeting. There you go.
We've got 13 volunteers so far. Help out, guys. And another thing I want to talk about is the race coming up this 27th, the Glass City Marathon. Now, Connecting Kids to Meals, who we're teaming up with on the food pack right here, is also setting up a table at the end of the kids race on Saturday. So the main race is on Sunday. On Saturday, there's a 5K and a kids race. And at the end of this kids race, Connecting Kids to Meals has a table giving out goodies to all the kids who ran. And they would like some help from us. So if you could go on to the Glass City Marathon webpage and sign up for the kids table at the end of the kids race with Connecting Kids to Meals, that would help them out quite a bit as well.
Excellent.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Thanks, Max. So the food pack has always been one of my favorite events every year. And for those of you with young kids, I've always brought my daughter that. I've always had her bring her friends to it. It is a great opportunity for young kids to feel the ability to help other children who need to eat, something that, you know, my kid has definitely never had to worry about. So it's a great opportunity to provide perspective for them and an opportunity to serve. So just a little add on to there. So thanks again, Max. Kelly Train, will you please come to the podium for member introduction of Ms. Kim Danes?
I need to move it down. Hey, Rotary. I am thrilled today to introduce one of my friends, Kim Danes. She was born and raised on the Portage River in the small farming village of Elmore in Ottawa County. All 4 of Kim's grandparents were farmers, and her family still farms. Her grandmother was a Navarre, and she can trace her Native American roots to the Ottawa tribe. Kim has been serving her community since she was a young teen in youth fellowship, followed by over 50 years of volunteerism with numerous nonprofits in the area. She is chair of the scholarships for all 3 Toledo Symphony Youth Orchestras through the Remembrance Fund of the Toledo Symphony League, a member of Blue Star Mothers, and has an active duty Navy officer daughter, a member of the Conservation Committee at Ottawa National Wildlife Refuge, a founding member of the United Way Women's Initiative, and a member of the Kobacher Society of the Toledo Symphony Orchestra. Kim has an associate's degree in marketing from Owens Technical College, a bachelor degree in business from the University of Toledo, and a master's degree in organizational leadership from Lord's University. A fellow certified fundraising executive, Kim serves as in a new position as Director of Advancement for the Salvation Army, covering Lucas, Wood, Ottawa, Henry, and Fulton counties. Welcome, Kim.
Thank you. And it's Elmore. Elmwood is a school, and I'm an original Elmoron, and only I can call myself that. So I was sitting around doing nothing last summer, and I got a call from my best friend saying, hey, this has your name written all over. And I said, nah, but I'm retired. So I decided to start with the Salvation Army and make a big difference in my community. Little did I know that starting on Turkey Distribution Day would go into the most intense 7 weeks of my entire life. So here I am. I now know that Salvation Army is much more than a bucket and a bin, and I feel like I'm finally in the right place at the right time. So 5 things that I want to share, because these are 5 exemplary qualities of a good leader. Number 1, model the way. Number 2, inspire a shared vision. Number 3, challenge the process, and the new majors will attest to that. Number 4, enable others to act. Number 5, encourage the heart. So what I give you today as a new Rotarian is that I will strive to carry on the mission of service to others just like I have for over 5 decades. Toledo's my home. I've made the decision to stay put because I can do more good here than any other place in the world. So we're going to move forward together, and we're going to walk each other home. So thank you, and I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you, Kelly. Welcome, Kim. Next up, I would like to ask Justin Moore to come to the podium for a new member introduction of Dr. Tina Williams. I'll go ahead and adjust that.
Thank you, President Travis. Fellow Rotarians, it's my distinct honor today to introduce a new member, a colleague here at the Area Office on Aging, Director of Community Engagement, Dr. Kathleen Williams, as a new member. 3 things that really impressed me about Dr. Williams. First is education, second is experience, and third is relationships. With education, she got her doctorate in education from University of Findlay. And that's certainly more than I can say about my educational career. So that's one thing that impresses me about Dr. Williams. The second is experience. She's got a lot of experience in connecting with different communities, oftentimes those that are marginalized and most in need of services, about connecting people with education programs to help them with managing their diabetes, chronic pain, whatever the chronic condition is that they might be struggling with. And the third is relationships, not only relationships with people of prominence in the community like those in this room, but maybe even more so those that are really struggling to have their needs met. I truly believe that sometimes the individuals that are hardest to serve are the ones that need it the most. And Dr. Williams is not afraid of rolling up her sleeves and serving those that most are in need of those services worthily and well. So for that, I'm very grateful for Dr. Williams and the work she does at the Area Office on Aging, but also her joining Rotary and helping us in fulfilling our mission. So please join me in giving a warm Rotary welcome to Dr. Kathleen Williams.
Thank you, Justin. I just wanted to take the time to say that I am very honored and privileged to be a part of Rotary of Toledo. And over the last several weeks, I've met some wonderful people. I felt the warmth coming to these meetings on Mondays, made some great connections. I look forward to opportunities to serve. And I also am very impressed with the model from the International Rotary that states that service above self. And that's pretty much my life. Currently, I am tasked to work with those that are disenfranchised right now in the Vistula neighborhood. And we're just there to meet those unmet needs of those older adults age 60 plus and those with disabilities. I found that work to be very meaningful, and that's what I live my life by, community service and just making sure that I'm being a voice in the community for those that are older adults and those with disabilities that may not be able to speak up for themselves. So I am very honored to be a part of this work, and I look forward to working with you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Justin. Welcome, Dr. Williams. Greg Fest, will you please come to the podium to share details on your recent trip with the Dove Fund?
Thank you, President Travis. Fellow Rotarians, I bring you greetings from the Saigon Rotary Club, also known as Ho Chi Minh City. So I spent the better part of March in Vietnam with 31 other Americans, several of whom were Rotarians, many from the Maumee Club. I was the only Toledo representative, but there were Rotarians from California, other states. We were on a humanitarian mission to visit 34 projects across South Vietnam. Several years ago, I was on a Rotary International humanitarian trip for a clean water project in Sri Lanka with Tim Ryan, soon-to-be District Governor Tim Ryan, and mark your calendars, June 26th at the Art Museum's Glass Pavilion for his induction party. That's where I first met Chuck Stocking and Do and Teresa Young, both of whom are from Vietnam. Do started this group called the Dove Fund, like the bird of peace, which stands for Development of Vietnam Endeavors. So that's a Toledo nonprofit NGO started 24 years ago by these local Vietnam War veterans. And after hearing about it, I became a donor. For many of us, the Vietnam War was a very painful chapter in our young adult lives, particularly so for the guys who went to Southeast Asia to fight. But of course, just as painful, if not more so, it was for the people of Vietnam, upon whom we dropped millions of tons of bombs and chemicals in an area about the size of New Mexico. This group of Vietnam veterans that created the Dove Fund decided to rectify some of that damage that was done to that country. So they began to focus on areas most impacted by the war in the central part of Vietnam. To date, they've built 58 schools. They've completed over 100 clean water projects, all funded by Dove and completed with local labor. They've had thousands of microfinancing grants to women, tens of thousands of scholarships to kids, and funds for teacher stipends. But Dove Fund does something more. It takes veterans to their former battle sites, which has become a healing experience, an emotional closure, if you will. I have just a couple of slides I'd like to show you to get a sense of this trip. I learned a whole new definition of the word cuteness when I was there. These kids, every school, we went to about, as I mentioned, 34 projects. Probably 8 or 9 of them were schools, and many of them were elementary schools. And when we'd arrive, this is what we would be greeted by, these kids dressed up, and they put on a little show for us. This doesn't really look that interesting. It was the first project I visited. It was a water tower that the Dove Fund built to supply water to this village. But as I got closer, look what it says. Toledo, Ohio. Out in the middle of the wilds of Vietnam is a water tower with Toledo, Ohio. And I went, that's unusual. You can't read this, but that is the plaque at the base of the water tower. It's been there for some years. And it says, thank you to Toledo Rotary. Typical teachers, you can see they're holding envelopes. Those are the teacher stipends that the Dove Fund has given. Every time you get to a school, the teachers dress like this in their traditional dress, but they're all different, will be in a different color for another school. It's really quite interesting. You can see the lady in the sort of the reddish sweater. That's a Maumee Rotarian. It's another school of teachers. And another, you see how the costumes are changing color. This is the kids, this was a kitchen that Dove Fund installed in a daycare center. These are the scholarships that were presented to young adults. from needy families. You know. Interestingly, they still have these signs around, kids in the elementary schools, don't touch the bombs. Now the chicken farm, that was started as a micro investment, and you can see there the Rotary Club, particularly our District 6600 and the clubs of Maumee, Bowling Green, Tiffin, Findlay, Flag City, and Bellevue. A glasses project, they fit kids for glasses. You might know the Coyle family of Maumee. That's Bonnie Coyle. She was on the trip with us. This is a dental care project that we were distributing. There's the head of the Saigon Rotary giving me the flag or the pennant, which I am going to then present to President Travis after the meeting. I would like Chuck and Tim, if he's here, and others from the International Committee to stick around for a photo op of my presenting the flag to Travis so we can send that back to Saigon. There's Doe, as many of you know Doe, on the left. And the guy next to me on the right is a California Rotarian, and then there's the Maumee Rotarians too. Thank you very much for listening. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Greg. I appreciate it. You know what? We're going to go ahead and skip the presidential remarks because we're running behind. So I would like to ask Pat Bowe to please come to the microphone and introduce today's speaker, Kathleen Biggins. Sorry.
Really tough.
I'm trying.
It's a measurement of my personality, I think.
A lot of jokes, but yeah.
Stay. I'll speak loud. I'll try to be brief. Good afternoon. Thank you, President Travis, and good afternoon, fellow Rotarians. I want to give more time to Kathleen to speak, but I'd like to do a proper introduction first. We have a great speaker with us today that's going to speak about climate change. And Kathleen Biggins was brought to Toledo by the Country Garden Club, and you can see by the sign over here, we are fortunate at the Andersons to be lead sponsors along with a bunch of other local companies and businesses you know well. She will be speaking Wednesday evening at Owens Community College for a public event. There's some information on your tables about that. If you'd like to come or know people who would like to come, we'd love to have people show up there, as well as speaking at local schools. So we're going to get a big bang for the buck of her visiting the Toledo area this week. So we're happy to have her in town. And Kathleen is a really driving force behind Sea Change Conversations. She'll tell you more about that in a minute. It's a national nonprofit dedicated to demystifying the discussions about climate change and recognizing the urgent need for dialogue. Kathleen founded the organization in 2014. Her nonpartisan, science-based primer has earned acclaim from politicians, scientists alike, reaching over 20,000 people across 32 states and internationally. Kathleen's advocacy has been recognized by groups such as the World Presidents Organization, the Financial Executives Networking Group, the Garden Club of America, and Rotary International. Originally from New Orleans, educated at the University of Virginia, Kathleen's journey from journalism and advertising to climate education underscores her commitment to a sustainable future. Now based in Princeton, New Jersey with her family, Kathleen continues to inspire change on a global scale. So let's please give Kathleen a warm Rotary welcome. Let's see if we can make this mic.
Thank you so much for that introduction. Now I'm going to wrestle this off because I am a pacer. Ah, got it. Good thing I worked out this morning, right? It is such an honor to be with all of you, and it is such an honor to follow all the wonderful speakers that preceded me. You guys do such amazing things, and obviously Rotary is making such a difference around the world. I'm here to talk about a tough topic, climate change. And it's tough for a lot of reasons, but mainly it's tough because we are so divided on it. Depending on where you live, depending on whether you've experienced a major natural disaster recently, depending on how old you may be, depending on whether you affiliate with a political party, and depending on the media that you read or consume, you may have a very, very different perspective of this issue than someone sitting right next to you at this table. For some, it is an existential threat. It is a 5-alarm fire that's burning out of control, about to consume the world as we know it. For others, it's almost seen as a joke, right? Like, what else will they blame on climate change? And more of a sense of smoke and mirrors, something that takes time and treasure away from real problems, let's say like immigration or inflation. And those two very different perspectives make for some very difficult Thanksgiving dinner conversations, don't they? But it also makes it hard for our country to have meaningful policy, because if we are being whipsawed back and forth, depending on which administration comes in, it's really hard for us to have a consistent goal that we are moving towards. And as business people, you know that having policy kind of sets the rules of the road. And that is what allows businesses to plan and budget for what is coming in the future. So how did we get to be so divided? Well, I will start by saying that we haven't always been this divided. If you go back in time to 2000, when George W. Bush was elected, he came in with a cap and trade approach for climate change. There were multiple bipartisan bills introduced every single year of his 2 terms. And in 2007, Newt Gingrich, the Republican leader, and Nancy Pelosi, the Democratic leader, sat on a couch, cheek by jowl, and did a commercial saying that we should use cap and trade to solve the problem. And in 2008, it was on both presidential platforms, different ways to address it, but at least agreeing that it was a problem we needed to address. So what happened? Well, a lot of things happened, but one of the things that, or several of the things that came together to really prevent buy-in from the American public. So let's jump into that. What are the types of things that precluded us from buying into the policy? Well, I think the first is that the science seemed very unclear. Carbon dioxide is an invisible gas that we breathe in, that plants need. It's something natural. How could it be ruining our world? The second was that the impact seemed very far off. We were hearing that maybe the oceans would rise, maybe it would get hotter, but it seemed like something that would affect far-off places, far-off generations, and it was much more important to strengthen our economy today to prepare them for whatever would come if it came. The third is that the economic costs were high. At that time, green energy was a lot more expensive than fossil fuels. And our manufacturers would have been hindered if they were forced to use more expensive energy when countries like China were spending hand over fist on coal to drive their economies. And at the same time, we employed a lot more people in fossil fuels back then because it was really before automation had kicked in. And that meant in many states, fossil fuels were the primary job revenue getters, and there was a real desire to protect those jobs and those important industries. There was a sense as well that other countries weren't doing their share. It was all dependent on America to take the hit. And there was a sense that climate action was all about sacrifice. It's about kind of atoning for our emissions, whether it was freezing in our homes or giving up our gas stoves or not having our barbecues and our beef. It was about giving things up. And all of those together made for a really powerful witch's brew to stop policy in its tracks. But if you fast forward to today and you look at this problem fresh pair of eyes, factoring in all of the scientific breakthroughs, all of the ingenuity, American entrepreneurship that has occurred to change that landscape, we believe that addressing climate change could be something that actually unites us instead of dividing us. So let's see if you'll agree as well. Let's jump into the first one. The science seemed unclear. And that's because most Americans didn't understand how greenhouse gases work. So let's jump back to our 6th grade for a minute and go through how these important gases impact our world. So when the solar radiance comes down, it passes through the atmosphere and strikes the Earth's surface. Some of it is absorbed, but quite a lot of it ricochets back out into space. And as it does so, it is at a different wavelength. And this new wavelength is partially captured by a teeny tiny portion of our atmosphere, which is comprised of greenhouse gases: carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, and even water vapor. They make up less than 1% of our atmosphere. But without them, we would have a frozen planet. Humanity would not be here. But when we add to them, it simply means they capture more of that ricocheting energy and re-radiate it back down to the Earth, warming us up further and adding energy into our climate systems. Another way to think of this is the balance of carbon dioxide. So I think we all know there's a balance between plants and animals, but there's also a balance where nature stores carbon dioxide in the oceans, in the air, and in the earth. And I'd like you to think about what these two words mean, fossil fuels, because if we consider what they are, it will help us understand what is happening. Fossil fuels are little bits of plant and animal matter that fell to the earth millions of years ago, got silted over with time, heat, and pressure, got turned back into elemental pools of carbon, what we call fossil fuels: oil, gas, and coal. And humans came along and said, wow, really rich in energy, really portable, really storable. I'm going to use it. I'm going to use it to heat my homes, to power my transportation, to run our factories, and to create the vibrant economies that we all have benefited from. But in doing so, they were taking carbon that had been sequestered deep underground over millions of years and started to pump it up into the atmosphere at the alarmingly fast rate of 40 billion tons of carbon every single year, much faster than it happens in nature, which is upsetting the balance that has existed since humans have been on the planet. And today, we have all sorts of new technologies that enable us to see those emissions. They are no longer invisible to us, and we can see exactly how much it's going up and exactly where it is going up. And we have the ability to test those emissions to discern which ones come from burning fossil fuels. And that's because they have a different atomic fingerprint or thumbprint, if you will. So we can literally know which part of the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere that we are responsible for. And we're putting up a lot. Take a look at this graphic. It goes back 800,000 years. And what you can see is naturally the carbon dioxide have bandied between, say, 150 to 300 parts per million. Those were through the natural cycles the Earth has always gone through an ice age and a thaw, and an ice age and a thaw. And then you see in 1910 we broke out of that cycle, crossing over 300 parts per million. And now we are at 425 parts per million. And if we continue on our current path, we would hit close to 1,000 parts per million by the end of the century. And we can see the science in action. Take a look at this graphic, which shows from NASA, which shows how average global temperature has changed from pre-industrial time to today. When it is blue, it is colder than average. When it is white, it is average. Yellow, warmer. Red, hotter. So as you can see, at the end, it really comes crescendoing in. And that is because at this point we are truly breaking records. 2023 was the hottest year recorded, and we are approaching 1.4 degrees Celsius hotter than before the Industrial Revolution. And because science has again improved, we can now, through the science of attribution, literally measure a disaster or a heat wave and discern whether climate change made it worse, more likely, or of course, more deadly. And what we're seeing here is a picture of the Earth during last summer where it was so hot in so many areas, including our own Southwest. And what the scientists say is that 4 billion people, half of the population of Earth, were experiencing temperatures in their areas that was made 3 times more likely due to climate change. And what that means is we're beginning to put a dollar sign on the pain that it is causing. And we also have new ability through science to predict what's coming. And they are beginning to predict it down to a single address level. So you can look up and see your house, how likely it's going to be affected by high winds or heat or wildfire. And again, if you can predict that, it changes the legal and fiscal ramifications of what climate change could mean. So science is changing things up, and I'm not sure that we're all aware of what's coming. Let's move to that second part, the fact that the impacts felt really far away. Well, today we can see them with our own eyes. Take a look at this graphic of the Arctic Ocean. This is from NOAA, and it shows how the mature ice, which is in white, is melting and leaching away, being replaced by the immature ice in open water, which are light blue and dark blue. It starts from 1990 coming up towards modern time or current times. And the reason why this is so important is that mature ice, that white ice, is highly reflective. So that means more of that initial solar radiance that comes down ricochets way back into space. If we lose it, it means we're baking in additional temperature for future generations. We can see it with our own eyes at the glaciers around the world, and we can see it in our own eyes with the bleaching of the coral reefs, which I'm sure we've all been reading about, that it's happening right now in a very major way. And the oceans are absorbing so much of the heat that they're getting much hotter. In fact, last summer, the Florida oceans were 101 degrees, the hottest that they had been measured. And that, of course, impacts coral reefs, which are the nurseries for 24% of all sea life. So that has real ramifications for future generations' ability to feed themselves from the sea. We can see it with our own eyes by looking at your own weather records right here in Toledo. You can see how many more hot summer days you're experiencing than you did in 1970. And all of that is from emissions that have already gone up. But we are putting up emissions right now that are going to impact our kids and grandkids later in the century. So what we're putting up will impact the future, and this is a projection of what your summers could feel like up here in Toledo. Be about 8.6 degrees hotter by the end of the century. And that is an average of 26 different climate models. That's not taking the worst case. We can also see it in the dangerous rainstorms that we are experiencing. Does anybody know why climate change impacts the rain? Anybody? Why? No?
I didn't think you were going to see my hand. Because more water vapor is being absorbed in the atmosphere, so the water cycle ends up, there's more water being dropped in places.
Exactly. So the oceans are warmer, which means they evaporate more. The air is warmer, which means they can hold more. Every degree Celsius it gets warmer, it can hold 7% more water vapor, which means that when the conditions are right for that thunderstorm, they're happening more likely as a cataclysmic rain instead of a restorative shower. And obviously you guys have experienced that right here in the Ohio area. And it's really happening all across the world. As you can see from this graphic, even in places in drought, When they do get the rain, they're often getting it in this more dangerous form. What else does that heat do? Well, it causes drought. Why? Because it dries up the soil, it dries up the plant material, less water gets down into our aquifers. What else does it do? It dries up surface water. How does that happen? Well, because it means that in our mountain areas, the precipitation falls later in the year as rain instead of as snow, and it melts earlier in the spring because it's warmer, which means that during the summer, when we really need that water for farming, for cities, even for energy production, and even for wildlife, we don't have as much as we need, and that indeed will get worse as we get hotter. And so we have this issue where sometimes we have too little water, sometimes we have too much water, but almost in both cases, the water is getting dirtier, right? Because if you have a drought, that means that the toxins in the water get much more concentrated. When you have these floods, contaminants wash through. And of course, there are many reasons for algal blooms, but this is something that you guys have wrestled with quite a lot. But when the nutrients hit warmer water, the warmth of the water is part of the catalyst that enables these to form. Okay, natural disasters. Who thinks there are more of them than there used to be? About half? Yeah, okay. Well, take a look at this graph from NOAA, and you can see that those who raise your hand would be held out as right. These are big disasters. These are $1 billion disasters. So these are the ones that we really notice, and last year we had 28 of them. Whoops, sorry, stay. And intriguingly, when we did we did a program with Chubb Insurance in Princeton, where we were talking about how insurance is being impacted by it. And what he told me was that, honestly, they pay out more on the smaller disasters than they do even on the bigger ones, on the hailstones, on the rain. It's just because of the frequency that those are happening as well. And if you look at what Chubb Insurance says, you can see that these are directly linked to climate change. So again, I think we have a clearer picture that climate change impacts are happening all around us. And clearly that has impacts on our crops, when we mess up the water systems, and when the heat gets above the levels that these crops can flourish, then obviously it begins to harm yields. And in fact, it's projected as we get into the second part of the century, if we reach that 3 degrees Celsius, which is definitely the track we are currently on, we will lose our ability to produce food as much as we are doing now with current technology, in really the major growing areas of the world, in the Rice Bowl in our own Midwest, and what I call the salad bar and wine cellar of America over in California. Okay, and these pressures are on the move. Migration is up, and it's not just against the bottom of our country, it's also projected to come into your backyards. And the reason being is the South is gonna get really hot. And that means productivity is going to go down, that means their economy is going to be hurt, and that means people are going to be moving for economic opportunity. And because of the Great Lakes, Ohio is a beautiful beacon of hope for people that might be displaced. So that's expected in the second part of the century. Climate change impacts our health. The medical associations have come out in a big way saying that public health is, the greatest threat to public health is the fact that we are failing to keep the temperature below 1.5 degrees. Our defense has said the same thing. Again, these pressures make for more conflagrations and also make it harder on our soldiers to stay safe. And our economy. We're seeing an economy, this is from BlackRock, taking a look at where local economies will begin to be harmed and where they will grow. And this is not making my friend, come on. Okay, and even our investments. This is from Moody's, and this may not be an area that you've thought about climate change impacting, but they sure are. This looks at the different sectors and how they will be impacted as we go forward. And they projected that something, and I'm saying this from memory, something like 20% of the top companies are at risk of being downgraded in the next 2 decades just because of climate change, because of the impacts on their bottom line. So it's a big deal. And we also know that climate change will have impacts on businesses large and small, employee disruption, lower consumer demand, utility outages, supply chain issues, and insurance costs and coverage, as well as the transition risk. So I think we can agree the risks are real and they're big, and their scale and scope of them is one that we need to notice and take stock of as we go forward. Economic cost and job loss. Well, guess what? This is the good news. This is the good news because the old economic equation has been turned on its head. We now understand that with climate action, we will save money and save jobs. And that is a critical reason why we have hope going forward that we can address this issue. Take a look at how, on a global basis, apples to apples, unsubsidized, renewable energy has dropped so far below coal and gas that they are replacing it all around the world for all new demand, or most new demand. And in part it's because battery storage also has come down that has enabled it to have such a bigger part to play within our energy mix. And this means that in all of the major emitters, China #1, the US #2, and India #3, renewable energy is the cheapest form of new energy. And it is playing out in the mix of what is being built. You can see here in 2023, 86% of all new power that came online in America was fossil-free. And it's projected to be a much higher amount, around 96% in 2024. It also means that investment focus has changed, with clean energy getting a lot more than fossil fuels over the last 5 years. And it's leading to savings in some unusual places. This is a graph of savings in Texas. Now, you don't think of Texas as being a renewable star, but it is. What, you can't hear? Oh, this time? But I started last. Okay. So Texas saved $11 billion because of the amount of renewables they had. And that's critically important because they are deregulated, and so it's really just the market factors that were forcing that. It also means that the economy is growing while emissions are slipping, and that jobs are growing as well. And intriguingly, these jobs are coming in many of the areas where in the past they were worried about losing jobs. But you can tell from this graph how widespread the job creation has become. And we know there's all sorts of new tech coming as well, from fusion to green hydrogen to geothermal, which is super exciting. Somebody please ask me about that, and new nuclear as well. And that we now have new carbon capture things, which I know you guys do up here already, but this is the first natural gas plant built in Texas that is net zero. Other countries we thought were not doing their share, but in fact 136 countries have stepped forward, representing 90% of global GDP. China is by far the biggest spender on all the new technology. They are outmaneuvering us, outspending us, and are in some ways cornering the markets. You can see whether it's wind, solar, EVs, they are the leader of the pack. India, as well, is sprinting towards renewables. And I know that's kind of a newer thing that's happened, but they are still using a lot of coal, about 80%, in part because that's what they have, and their economy is growing so fast. But they are pivoting hard. They have pledged to be net zero by 2070. And this is the new solar factory that they're building. It is 5 times the size of Paris and could power the entire household of Switzerland. And the young billionaire who is building it is Adani, who is the coal billionaire, said, quote, if India does what Europe did, if India does what China did, if India does what the US did, then we will all be in store for a very bleak future. So they are getting the memo. And the reason they're getting the memo is because they are much more vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. China and India are much more vulnerable. Their food production, their manufacturing, and just how hot they're going to become, and especially in India, where 80% do not have air conditions, and the heat already is in deadly terrain. And lastly, we used to talk about climate action as sacrifice. And I think we should talk about it instead as saving the things we love. Whether it's ice fishing, or snowboarding, or skiing, or swimming and seeing the fish on a beautiful coral reef, or whether it's some of our favorite foods. Because guess what? The higher temperatures decrease meat production. Guess what? The higher temperatures can impact wheat production. Cheese also goes down. Hops for our beer also is harmed by higher heat. Coffee, chocolate, wine, olives, everything I live for. Everything I live for is endangered. And so, to me, I see climate action, especially with all the new technologies that are coming forward, as a way to save the things that are most dear, instead of as a sacrifice. And what we choose to do really matters. Take a look at this projection for the young people here in your community, if we take action and if we do not. This shows how each generation up to Gen Alpha, which are those who were born 2010 and after, and the types of temperature they will feel if we don't act, close to 10 degrees hotter, and if we do, instead, around 4. So the decisions we make today will impact the people we love most. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
So I know we're really tight on time. I do want to have some questions, though, so I ask that you come to the floor mic. Please make it a question, no pontificating, and we'll go a few minutes here, so thank you.
Am I allowed to ask them to do a survey? Yeah, okay. Guys, 1 second. If you have your phone and we have dispensation, you can take it out. This is a brand new presentation. We haven't done this one before. I did it just for you because of the time constraints. If you take this survey, it takes 1 minute, and it would be so helpful to us. So please take your phones out and take a snap. And yes, questions.
Okay. Notice that having a white Christmas is starting to really be a rare thing versus a normal thing. And so do you see seasons shifting because getting a lot of snowfall in February? So are you seeing that?
Yes, seasons are definitely shifting. Winters are definitely getting warmer. Spring is definitely actually getting earlier. And the reason why it's concerning, besides not missing out on the white, is that it means that things are getting out of sync, so that when the spring comes too early, then some of the plants bloom too early, and the birds that need to eat those, or the insects that eat those plants, are coming later. And so we're having this mismatch within nature because the seasons are moving so fast. So yes.
What is your opinion on artificial intelligence in regards to like what Dubai's doing with like the artificial rain and things like that? Like, do you have an opinion on that?
Sure. So, well, the seeding of the rain is more engineering than AI, but yes. So AI, they believe, could do a lot of good things for climate action because it can play out the scenarios in different ways, and it can map out our different futures in a more precise way. So a lot of people are holding out hope that it can also analyze how some of this geoengineering could actually play out, and that's what you were talking about with the seeding. But AI is also part of the problem because it consumes so much energy. And we're seeing in our country now, because of the new manufacturing boom, because of data centers, and because of AI, our energy demand is going up, and it's been flat for the last 10 years. And so as it goes up, it means we have to meet more demand. And then the question is, can we do it just with renewables, or how fast we can build the renewables? So it's kind of a double-edged sword, but some people believe good and bad. Yes?
Hi, just really quick, thank you for this. It was good stuff. This is my career, so, you know, I'm trying to like separate myself from some of this. I just have a question. So I've seen a lot of initiatives over the past decade and a half and such like that, trying to, you know, do a lot of exactly what you're doing, Catherine Hale on down. I'm just kind of curious to know, and this is a bit of a I don't mean this to be too challenging, but what about this is different that will work when a lot of the other ones happened?
What, this
Yeah,
presentation?
this whole initiative that you're doing. I'm just kind of curious.
Okay,
because I've seen a lot, so I'm
a
telling you.
couple of reasons. We tend to go in through, okay, it's who we are. We are made up of people across the political spectrum. It's how we approach this in a very nonpartisan, science-based way. It's how we do it. We go through associations. So it means that if a Rotary or a Young Presidents Organization or a garden club or an investment club invites us in to their regular meeting, then we're hitting people that would never self-select to go hear about climate change. But because we're going to them in a very comfortable place and they see people according the presentation respect, then it enables them to ask questions or maybe think differently. We also have found that we position this not as an environmental issue or a green issue, but instead as one that is about jobs and economy, personal health and security, and geopolitical stability. And those are things that all Americans care about, so we are positioning it in a way that is relevant to a wide audience. And what we've also heard is that our presentations kind of lay it out like you would to a jury, letting people make their own decisions at the end, instead of in any way browbeating them or telling them exactly what they need to think. So we've been now, as Pat said, 32 states, 20,000 people, and that's just through people recommending us forward, saying, hey, someone else, you need to see this. That's how we came here today. So that's it.
Thank you.
We're trying, yes.
Hi, wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
Do you think the divide that you described also applies to trust in scientific authorities, in research, climate experts and so on? And if so, how do you deal with that divide and how scientists are viewed?
You know, to me, that makes me so sad. Because for me, always, science kind of was the one that gets opinion and emotion out of it, and it's about what the facts show and the numbers show. And the fact that we have degraded our ability to trust science is such a loss, because it used to be one of the few things we could put our feet against, right? That was something that was kind of universal. I know that I see climate change in the world around me with my own eyes. I see it when I see the Arctic Ocean melting away. I see it when I travel. I see it when the blooms come out too soon and get hammered. And that gives me more confidence that the scientists have it right. The other thing is, if you look at every major scientific association, not individual scientists, associations that literally take a vote on whether climate change is real or not, all of them, every prestigious, every recommended one that you would recognize says climate change is real and that it poses real problems ahead. So I know that there are one-offs, there are scientists that, there's still scientists who say that HIV doesn't lead to AIDS. So there are always going to be scientists that have different perspectives. That's part of being a scientist. But when you look at how strong the consensus is, it is overwhelming. And I don't think people really get that anymore because we've been told don't trust the science. And it's a big handicap to overcome. Yes?
Real quick, and I know you gotta go. I was recently at the Chicago Natural History Museum, and it was a large exhibit. They said that there were 7 climate catastrophes in the history of the world. So I'm just curious, and you can answer in an email or whatever, but how does that get reconciled against?
Wait, 7?
Climate catastrophes is how they referred to it. So just curious how that gets, you know, and great presentation, but.
Thank you. No, and it's true. It's talked about when species have been disrupted and the world changed cataclysmically. And I have seen that exhibit as well. But if you want to leave me your email, I'm happy to respond because I think we're out of time. Yes. Thank you guys so, so much. Really appreciated being here.
Kathleen, thank you so very much for being here. Fascinating information. Thank you all for your patience. I know we ran over. We had a lot of things going on. I'll bring this over to you in a moment, but to say thank you, I'll be presenting you with a copy of Historical Tales of Toledo, which is authored by our past president, Clint Mock. And we'll also be making a donation in your name to the Polio Plus campaign to eradicate the world of polio once and for all. So again, thank you so much for being here today. Okay. Next week, we will be joined by Ohio Attorney General David Yost, so please be here next week. There is one meeting this afternoon, and that is the Youth Committee is meeting in Summit A. This is going to be kind of a wild week for public image, but if anybody's watching TV, Adam Cassie, our head of our environmental services, and I will be on the 4 o'clock news on WTOL today, talking about Earth Day and Rotary's impact. And then Thursday, I will be appearing on the 9, discussing the golf outing and also Rotary's impact in Northwest Ohio in the world. So check those out if you want. Hopefully they've got a 5-second delay because they won't let me bring my swear jar. Everybody, thank you so much for being here. Thanks for your patience. Go out, create hope in the world. Have a wonderful week. We're adjourned.